welcome everyone to almost our last webinar of this series. One question is, right, how do we make sure everyone knows about all the great things that you actually do? And that's what we'll be focusing on in this webinar.
Great, thanks for inviting us to do this webinar. Yes, at Brighton Hove Food Partnership, we communicate with lots of different audiences, and we have a communication strategy which covers our approach. Firstly, I thought I'd delve a little bit into the different types of audiences we have, because each different audiences has a different way of us communicating with them. So we work with people we call participants. They might be individuals who receive our services. They might attend community courses, or they might volunteer at gardens. Sometimes they might have a learning disability or have dementia, for example. So we often work with a partner organisation who supports that particular group to communicate with them. We have a referral email bulletin which goes out to partner organisations, and we use that whenever we have particular things that we want to advertise. We also physically make leaflets and posters, and we use our website and newsletter to reach participants. We also have customers. They might be people who are interested in food, cooking and composting. They might pay to go on our courses. We tend to reach them by our newsletter, which goes out every 2 weeks. We also do a lot of social media, and we are lucky to have our community kitchen in town is right on a busy high street. So we have a shop front where we can advertise things as well. We work with local businesses too. They might be local restaurants, they might be shops that donate food, and we might be corporate teams. We tend to reach them through social media, and work with partner organisations like the Chamber of Commerce. We also try to get personal relationships with businesses, so we try to nurture personal relationships. We also work with a lot of community food groups. We tend to reach these via Google groups. So we have different Google groups that might have a Google group for the Emergency Food Network and a different Google group for funding, for example. And we also talk to them at regular networking meetings, and provide one-to-one support. And then we also have an audience which is kind of policymakers and strategic partners. These people we tend to meet like through one-to-one connections, so really nurturing personal relationships, and that'd be through networking, attending key events, strategic meetings, that sort of thing. So those are our main audiences. So our key communication channels are that we have this newsletter, and that's really our main way of reaching people. 4,000 people at least read that every 2 weeks. And so that's our top channel for marketing. We also get a lot of hits on our website. So we had over 109,000 hits on our website last year. A lot of those are to do with seeking emergency food. And we have a fairly active Twitter, Instagram and Facebook following. And we try to make sure all our communications are kind of fun and interesting and sort of pitched in the right way, so they're not too difficult. So how do we make a case for ourselves and our work? So the work that we've been developing at Brighton Hove Food Partnership has been kind of a template, which has gone on to inspire the creation of other food partnerships across the UK. There are now over 95 other food partnerships in the UK and they're supported by the Sustainable Food Places Network. So we tend to follow a bit of a pattern when we're approaching a new project or campaign to make a case for ourselves. So we look at mapping. That could be mapping the stakeholders of a theme or a particular geographic area, for example. It's looking at like, who do we want to talk to? Who do we want to communicate with? Who has influence? Who has maybe lived experience or knowledge in a particular area? And then we look at sort of participation and co-development. So really co-creating projects along with those stakeholders. So it's bringing people along with us rather than having something that is done to them. We use a lot of data and evidence. So we provide proof of what is happening or prove the efficacy of our work. This could be, for example, like a survey of a particular sector, could be focus groups. It could be undertaking case studies of like community projects that really work, or individuals that have been impacted in some way. Then we disseminate all that information through to people that might have influence, or through the campaigns that we run. And we nurture those personal relationships with key decision makers and attend strategic meetings, and really think about finding areas of mutual interest to those audiences. So, you know, is it for the council statutory responsibilities, or is it improving health outcomes, or reducing carbon emissions, that sort of thing. So I'll just delve into one of the campaigns that we've been doing recently. So each year we do a survey of the Emergency Food Network, which is 50 organisations in the city. This is really important to our work because it's we find out their immediate issues. We get kind of headline statistics with like how many people are reaching their services, how many people are in poverty. We also find case studies of best practice, and then also the impact of individuals, because the press really just wants the like impact on individuals. They want to speak to people that have been affected. So we've been running a campaign called Food SOS, and that audience is really looking at the general public and other organisations. We've been running a joint fundraising campaign with a local Citizens Advice Bureau and the council, and we raised over £76,000 through that last year. We work with local schools and churches to organise donation drives, and we've been using the data from the Emergency Food Network survey to use in press releases to get into the local media. And then we've been really talking to policymakers and strategic partners. We've been using the same statistics from the Emergency Food Network survey. We set up a food insecurity working group with people from key council departments and voluntary organisations. We've worked within the council to advise on food policy, the food insecurity. We've influenced how the council spent its budgets, and we've put food on key council documents, so in its corporate risk assessments, for example. And we've advocated for a preventative approach and a cash first approach where possible in strategic decision making. So our other audience has been looking at the government and Department for Work and Pensions. So we've used the same stats again that we had from our survey. We've given evidence to parliamentary briefings and written to the Treasurer and the Prime Minister. We've provided evidence to the Department for Work and Pensions, and have also given our evidence to national campaigning organisations who might work on a national scale. And we've been then sharing their work and writing to our MPs and things like that. So that's the food insecurity work, but also thought I'd talk about another one of our projects at the moment, which is a brand new project, so we're all quite excited about it. Land Use Plus is a new project working on a landscape scale across Brighton, working with farmers, the local council and others to improve food production practices that impact on climate change. So through the Land Use Plus project, we aim to encourage nature-friendly farming that both produces food and protects and restores rare local habitats, increase local awareness of the environmental impacts of food production, develop and improve local food supply chains, and support a joined-up approach to land use in the local area, connecting food production with the environment and spaces for people. So we've, for this project, again, we've looked at our different audiences and divided them into groups to understand what the key messages for each of them are. We needed to make sure that they understood what we were doing and why we're doing this, and why should you buy local and sustainable. And then we've kind of gone for the low-hanging fruit, so the people that are already leaning this way, and to sort of persuade them so that others might follow in their stead. And we've also, in terms of our tone, we've used a really positive angle on everything. So talking to them about why it's a good thing for them, making people feel really empowered that they're doing a good thing, that kind of thing. So one of our key audiences for this are farmers, who are notoriously quite hard to engage with. And we've been reaching them by working with the land agent and working with farmer clusters. And that's been just to find out their details, like who are they and how do we contact them. And then we've been approaching them individually. So for some, that might actually be physically writing a letter and posting it, because they might not have an email, for example, or it might also be reaching them through email. We identified the key respected individuals who had influence, who might be able to kind of talk to their community and really nurture that relationship. And then we've been organising events to talk to them, and these have been in the evening, in winter when they're not so busy, and with food. So there must be something that kind of really works for them, and we've been using those events to ask them what they think. So really listen to them about what would work for them, like how could they transition to nature-friendly farming and how would it work for them. Another audience who we've been talking to are councillors and council officers. So some of them might not understand what sustainable food is, for example. And then so we've been really talking to them about how sustainable food is meeting their aims, thinking about the consequences that will meet council aims, like improving the economy or reducing the impact on the environment or health outcomes for people. We've just started working with retailers, so these are probably the hardest people to get to, and we're working with a respected partner, Restaurants Brighton, but this is kind of a work in progress at the moment. But the thing that we've been doing to really reach out to customers potentially is starting a new brand called Sussex Grazed. It is looking to try and make a local market for the animals that are grazed on the downland which surrounds Brighton. And our local landscape is chalk downland, so it's a site of special conservation interest due to the incredible diversity of plants and animals which can be found in it. And in order to conserve that biodiversity, it needs to be grazed by animals, but hardly any of that meat is sold into the local market. And actually, it's also quite hard to grow vegetables and things like that on our land. So most of the food that we can produce in the local area is meat. So we're trying to educate people about the value of conservation grazing. And obviously, that's kind of a tricky message at the moment, because whilst we're also advocating people to eat less meat, but this is about eating less but much better meat. Sussex Grazed provides meat boxes that people can buy, also provides recipes and information about how to use the product to make it easy for people to use. And we have got a newsletter that goes out, and we're kind of collecting information about people that might want to continue buying this and other similar products.
Thank you very much, Helen. So are there any questions from any of you?
Thanks, Helen, for the presentation. I was wondering how often do you send the newsletter, and how more or less is this about? Because we are thinking about on it, but we haven't made the step yet.
So are you saying that for the meat newsletter?
No, the newsletter, the overall newsletter that you reach a very overall big audience, and so how
Yes,
easy it is, the content, the frequency.
it's every 2 weeks, so it is quite a lot of work for the person that does it, gathering all the information from staff and making sure that it's all in there. We tend to kind of share our stories and then kind of stories of other things that are happening around the city as well, so it's not just all the content that we provide, but maybe each newsletter might have like a couple of different blogs and events, maybe some job opportunities and things like that. I'm really happy to send an example out, actually, if anyone wants to see it. Yeah.
I saw a lot of nodding, so I think it'd be cool if you could share the newsletter. Johanna, you also have a question.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, Helen. I found it super inspiring, your presentation, especially looking at the last project with the farmers, and that you said that retail is much more difficult to reach than farmers, which I wouldn't have expected somehow. Maybe you can also elaborate on that. But my main question was about the first part of your presentation where you talked about, yeah, reaching out to audiences and customers, and especially that you're like working so much with food aid. I was wondering how are you reaching audiences that wouldn't have like a regular access to the internet, for example, maybe people without housing or people, yeah, I don't know, what's your experience with that? Or yeah, do you reach people in any way that's not the internet? That's basically my question.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so I'll do the last one first. So I think actually most people have the internet now. I think there are some people that are digitally excluded, but that they're becoming far, far fewer. Some people can't afford the internet. So actually we found like text communication, which I hadn't mentioned at all actually, but which is, we find that really, really useful. So for example, on our groups to our kind of community groups and things like that, we might send a reminder via text. We also, for beneficiaries, we do vouchers via the phone as well. So it tends to be fairly unusual if someone doesn't have a phone at all nowadays. So and WhatsApp as well, for example, like, so WhatsApp has been absolutely brilliant for like surplus food groups and things like that to get information to people really quickly. But also, yeah, so we still do physically make leaflets and posters as well to like put around community settings and things like that if we think that someone might be digitally excluded. And I think I mentioned we tend to work with partner organizations. So if someone's already reaching those people, they might have a personal relationship with them. So we might put the word out through that partner organization to reach them, because people tend to much more likely to go to things if someone they know is going, or there is some kind of personal connection there, than just turning up somewhere that they, you know, they don't know anyone. It's a bit scary. So that those are the ways we reach people that might not have the internet. And the retailers, so that's, I have to say, confess, this isn't my project, so I was downloaded my colleague's brain before I came here. But I think the tricky thing is that like a lot of retailers sell food, you know, supermarkets, all those kind of places just don't sell local food. So obviously we have like a lot of places that do sell local food, like nice little shops and things like that. The market for that's not actually that great at the moment. I think, I don't know if this is happening across Europe, but I think because of the cost of living crisis where people are trying to make savings, I think that is affecting like the higher end product, which tends to be a more expensive product if it's local. So that's a bit funny. Also, for this particular project, actually quite a few of the shops that we have in Brighton that are organic and local and things like that, they're vegan or vegetarian. So actually having a meat-based product, even though it's got lots of great things around it, and part of creating the Sussex Grazed label was around trying to give people a badge point to understand that a meat is produced in a really great way, because in Britain we don't really have the right labeling at the moment that helps with that. Like other than organic labeling, I think for meat products it's a bit of a people don't really understand the ones that are out there, and it's quite confusing. So it was partly just trying to make sure that people understood it was good. So yes, in terms of retailers, it's quite a small market in Brighton for how we get that sustainable meat sold. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Otherwise, I would have one, because you said in the beginning, like you try to make your to make the posts that you also do like on social media and so on, like it's fun and easy to understand and so on. I think it's everyone often says that, but the question is always, how do you do that, right? How do you ensure that that's actually the case?
Oh, that is a hard question. I think it's probably just having a really keen comms team. Like we don't comms are kind of held by everyone across the food partnership. So everyone is sort of in charge of doing their own comms, but also we've got one of my colleagues that does the newsletter and one that kind of oversees comms, if you like. So so I think it's as new staff members join, it's kind of like helping them sharing what things are kind of right, or like someone looking at a blog and just sort of saying, oh, actually, do you know what, most people don't use that language, you know, because generally it's about language. Like if we might be geeky kind of food of people, but actually, like a lot of people out there, won't understand that it's the classic thing with acronyms or calling a project a particular name or something like that other people don't understand, or using words that aren't that common, and then kind of really concentrating on celebrating. I mean, that's the thing that we're trying to do throughout our comms and all our work, is like really turn things around. So rather than calling things food waste, we call things food use. So our new project's food use places. So it's looking at like how we can put a positive spin on like the work that we're doing, rather than concentrating on the kind of negative aspects of anything, and looking at celebrating food and all its joys. So like celebrating occasions and recipes and things like that through our media.
We'll come back to you, Helen, when we go to the breakout rooms, and then you can say a bit more about your challenge as well. And then Vendela will now go to you and
as we were mentioning already in our first presentation or in some discussion, Nesehnutí has been dealing with a variety of issues, ranging from human rights to gender inequality, to sustainable living in cities and animal rights. So our audiences are also a very varied bunch, always depending on the team or on the project that we're talking about. But just to start with, I wanted to show a few pictures from what we did or what we do. So when Nesehnutí was established in 1997, it was focusing on campaigns that were a rather, or I would say that had like more, it was more like protest directed, or protest against some human rights violations or violations that the organization found important to bring to the public view. So one of the first events was in 1997, which was the year when the organization was also established. Guns versus Human Rights. That was the first program that the organization started with, and it was protesting the International Arms Fair that was taking place in Brno. And that's also one of the longer running programs that we then added discussions and anti-militarist festival, and always had some sort of direct action or some sort of event during the International Arms Fair. Then in 1998, the first critical mass bike ride in Brno was taking place, and it was also related to a campaign that Nesehnutí ran against the construction of an expressway that was supposed to destroy some environmentally very valuable areas. And then in 1999, when the Second Chechen War broke out, that would be the picture in the middle. When the war broke out, we became focusing on human rights issues in war zones, and this was one of the actions where there was it was not blood, obviously. It was a red paint that was thrown on the Russian embassy to bring attention to the atrocities and to the events that were taking place. Besides that, we also started co-organizing a Human Rights Week, where we were screening documentaries and held discussions related to the topics. Now, this is skipping almost 20 years forward. You can see that the events are more colorful and cheerful. We still like to be in the public space a lot, so that we or the topic we are bringing are visible. And so these pictures, the first one is from so-called the Good Lawsuit campaign, when we joined citizens of Brno commenting on a controversial update of the Brno zoning plan. The zoning plan is an issue that keeps coming back to us, and it keeps being problematic. So it's also a long-running issue that we deal with. The second one is from a campaign called Brno Touch, and it was a campaign for the preservation of the main train station in the city center, and also more broadly for sustainable transport in the city. And the last one is from a campaign called Hlava na hlavě, which could be loosely translated as squashed like sardines or something like that. And it's basically through this campaign, we were joining a Europe-wide petition to abolish the use of cages for farm animals. And besides some online activities, we also held several events in public space, and I think there was a video or music video shot with a local band that was also promoting the topic and trying to bring it more to the public space. Besides that, just to mention a few other activities. For example, when that was more than 10 or 15 years ago, we wanted to draw attention to sexism in advertising and build more dignified advertising environment. So we started announcing an anti-award called the Sexist Piggy, which was held every year. And it was also very popular, where people were nominating a sexist advertisement they saw in their area or in their environment. And then there was always a big event when the anti-award was awarded or was announced. We, from the other projects or other programs, we also campaigned for access to healthcare insurance for migrants living in the Czech Republic, where our goal was to change the law and allow immigrants with long-term residency to access the public health insurance. So that type of campaign was more focused on lobbying and advocacy work and working with the government. But we also organize regularly different festivals. Like in my program, in the program Together Towards Diversity, we organized a festival celebrated different cultures, music, and foods of newcomers living in Brno. Some other programs organize different kinds of discussions or conferences. And then it always depends on the audience, might be the citizens of Brno concerned about the sustainable development or sustainable transport in the city, or students when it comes to the gender rights program, or civic initiatives abroad when it comes to the Initiative Way program. So really, always depending on the specific program, also the audience vary a lot. And over here, I chose three examples that are most closely related to the food topic. So the first one is a website from the Squash Like Sardines campaign. So always or a campaign would always have some online presence as a website, social media, or we also used to use a lot of blog posts. Lucia might be talking about it a little bit more later. We use our mailing list, such as general organization mailing list, and then also for the specific campaigns or projects. In the offline world, we are working with press, especially with local press, because most of the issues are very tightly connected to the locality of Brno and its surroundings. So we're most trying to create strong connections with the local journalists. As you could have seen in the pictures, we like doing things in public space so that people see us somewhere in the city center or wherever they pass through. And for me personally, I also find very important, or I also find community events to be a very important channel. In our program, for example, in Together Towards Diversity, we organize many community events for newcomers and locals that are also, I would say, one of the very important tools for us to gather their needs and talk about the issues and talk about their needs. And now I would pass the floor to Lucia, who will tell you more about the colorful canteens.
Thank you, Vendela. Hello, everyone. I'd like to briefly introduce you our campaign, which is called Pestre jídelny. We can translate it as a colorful canteens. And I start with introducing our goals. And those are incorporating more plant-based food in school canteens and providing at least one vegan meal per week. Those lunches in the school should be for everyone. So people, students with special diets or ethic reasons or allergies should be able to enjoy their meal together with their friends. We want to have a sustainable canteens. That's why we also spread the word about the waste in the school canteens, and we also want to make sure that people working in a school canteens know about carbon footprint. Why is the name of the campaign colorful? That means variety. This slide is dedicated to action steps which we take. We put our energy into changing the law. This is the point. How we want to make our campaign successful. It's also the determination point. Once there is a change in the law, that could help to make a big change in the school canteen and make a change in the system. Those people who are really important to us, we meet personally. And next month we will organize a round table. How we build a community, mostly sharing content and news about what is happening in the campaign on social media, through which we also gather personal contacts to those people who are supporting our cause. And now I'd like to talk about the communication with the audience. As I mentioned before, we mostly use Instagram and Facebook. We also have a recently updated websites, which you can visit through the link. Our target group at the moment are mostly parents. We want to aim more for young people, which are those who consume food in the schools and eventually became parents as well. Medias we use are a blog. Blog is the great. I'm sorry. Blog is the great space where we can communicate very well the reasons why is it important to make a change in the school food, in the school canteens. When we talk about press, this is our weak spots, because we, as far as I know, we didn't make it to the main newspaper or any other printed offline media. This is something we want to work on. And interesting place where we would like to communicate is the websites. It's online forum, discussion forum. It's called eMimino, and these websites are very well known across the parents. This is the place where parents are usually looking for some advices from other parents, and it has a traffic of 2 million visitors monthly, which is quite a lot if you think about the whole population of Czech Republic. We have approximately 10 million inhabitants here. This is just a preview of our websites. It's very simple. We reduce the information to the basic. You can find, when you visit our websites, you can find 6 reasons why it's important to make colorful canteens, to make a variety. There's also a short paragraph which explains the importance for the change. Those who agree with those reasons and importance can sign appeal challenge, and thanks to this we also get in touch with them. They share their email address or a contact number, and then we can keep them, we can stay in touch, we can keep them updated. Visitors of websites can also support us financially and can visit our social media, thanks to the links. Here is just a quick preview of the Instagram. We have 750 followers, which is not much at all. What we do in Instagram, and I'd like to share with you, is the tools we use to reach more people. We tag some important representatives, such as the Minister of Education. And thanks to this, we drag attention to our campaign. We also invest money to boost some of the interesting and potentially good and successful posts. They're mostly a campaign informations and campaign updates. And we also create reels, which are, for those who work on Instagram, I cannot introduce much. Reels are just videos. The good thing about it is that it can reach people out of our social bubble. We used to have a pretty cool structure on Instagram and looked much more better than now. And we had some weekly schedule. On Monday, we shared a person, mostly influencer, who has a big audience, and this person was sharing, or is sharing, their ideas about food in school and their memories and their opinions. On Wednesday, there was a campaign update, and Friday was dedicated to some videos or reels, something which can bring more people. And here is my challenge, which I maybe keep for later. Yeah, and the last slides is dedicated to example from the past, action, call to action, which we prepared but wasn't very successful. Do I still have a time to describe this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So during this challenge, we encourage people to print this this paper, this statement, which says "Chci rovnost na talíři." That means I want equality on the plate, and that's because we want inclusivity in the schools. We want all of the students to be able to enjoy their food. So we ask our followers to print it, take a picture together with this statement, and share it with us, or tag someone who can share it as well. And as you can see, there are many people in the collage of this statement pictures. Unfortunately, all of them are from our organization, because none of the followers, none of the people who could support us, support our campaign, didn't really take an action after all. And I also want to share a positive experience, positive call to action. which was another challenge. We asked people to write a personal email to the Ministry of Education, and that was also part of our websites. Whoever visit our websites can just fill up the form and send personal email to the ministry, and that was quite good, quite success. And my challenge is how to keep our community in an active mode. So how to make a call to action which will be successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both of you. We'll talk about the challenge in a moment, but first I want to see if there's any other questions that might be coming from any of the other FSIs or people in the webinar. Angela, you have a question.
Hi guys, that was so interesting. I was just wondering if you could, I have two questions. One is if you could tell me more about that campaign with the sunglasses, with the chickens on the sunbed, and the sardines campaign. And also I had a similar experience. Thank you for your honesty, saying, you know, with your call to action that it wasn't very successful and that not many people did it. Before I joined Food Cloud, I was running a Sick of Plastic campaign, and we'd ask people to take pictures of plastic in their supermarkets, excess plastic, and then write a letter or an email complaining about it. And very few people did it, and it was torture because it was for Plastic Free July, so we had to dig up somebody to do it every day for a month. So thank you for your honesty on that, but I'm curious to hear more about the graphics for the campaign. Thanks.
So I can comment on the Hlava na hlavě, the packed like sardines one. That, so as I was mentioning, it was part, or we wanted to gather signatures under the EU-wide petition that was taking place in several other countries. And so as one of the tools, the team created this website where you can find information on industrial farming and like these like huge farms, livestock farms. And there was I'm not sure, it would take me a minute to find it right now, but there was also a map of I would say almost like all the large livestock farms in Czech Republic, where you could click on the individual location and find information about how many animals, what are the conditions, and who is the owner, or like some other important information. Some of these farms, we also had pictures. Some of the pictures were publicly available from like publicly available sources, but sometimes the team was also able to obtain pictures from the farms in other ways, and then we share them with the public so that people know also how it actually looks like inside and what kind of conditions the animals live in. And there were several calls to action as part of the campaign, or several goals. One was to educate people, to provide some information about the conditions of food production. With the second call was to change people's diet, not going directly or like not radically going vegan immediately, but just to maybe consider lowering their intake of meat and animal products, and increasing the intake of like different alternatives. And then as we were trying to gather as many signatures for the EU petition, that was also one of the goals, and the call to action to sign the petition that was running at the EU level. And yes.
Thanks, Lucy and Wendy, for the presentation. And Lucy, yeah, also for your honesty. I like I've been also thinking about another campaign we did in another project, and actually very similar. So I'm looking forward to the breakout room discussing like how can you actually get people to do stuff, and what might be like things that get too complicated for them to actually engage. So yeah, what's predispositions for making it as easy as possible for people to engage in this stuff. But actually my question was another one which was related to your Instagram, because I was wondering, do you have a, you said you don't have so many followers on your Instagram, and I was just wondering if Nesenuti has a general Instagram, or do you have for each campaign setting up a new Instagram account? Like how does it work for your organization?
Thank you for your question. Nesenuti has a main Instagram and Facebook page as well, and we are the only program within Nesenuti which has also separated individual Instagram. Whatever content we make on colorful canteen and is related to bigger topics, or is related to the content of Nesenuti, we also reshare it to the main channel.
And I will maybe add that we had discussions about this, having one channel as an organization and programs or campaigns having their own separate. It's a discussion that comes up every couple of years actually. And I think one of the conclusions was that we want to keep it as unified as possible. So that's why we don't have like a separate one for everyone or every project. But sometimes there is, of course, there is a project requirement that you need to have so many hits, so many clicks. So there needs to be something separate, but we do as much as we can to incorporate it into the common channels. And then sometimes when the project has a very specific target group, like one of the programs was working with teenagers, students and teenage students, and we found that it would be more relevant, or it would be stronger if they had their own separate channel only focusing on this, because the worry was that we would just lose their attention, we would lose their interest if we were showing also other things that were completely not important to them. So sometimes when this happens, when there's a very specific target group, we decide to have a separate one. But as Lucy was also mentioning, then we try to incorporate the relevant content also to the general one, so that we don't lose anything.